It's just listening to yourself and being like, okay, so this is something that I do on the side. Like, it's like my side hustle. I'm passionate about it. But like, what's the point of having like a side hustle that like really doesn't make you that much money if while you're doing it, you're not having fun? And so,
Hey everyone, this is Rebecca at Close.io bringing you our interview series featuring women in sales, where we find out how they grow and thrive both personally and professionally. In this episode, I am speaking with Heidi Gray.
hi guys. So, like Rebecca said, my name is Heidi Gray, and I am account manager at Skilljar. So we are a customer training platform used by enterprises to increase product adoption and increase retention overall. It's a very exciting, growing startup here in Seattle, and I'm also the founder of a blog called TheRougeEssentials.
The Rogue Essentials is a fashion and lifestyle blog focused on inspiring women to go outside of the norm to curate their own list of essentials. Heidi's experience in sales, mobile attribution, and fashion have all led her to launching and seeing success in her blog. Prior to Skilljar, Heidi worked as a manager at Nordstrom before moving to sales and account management roles at AWB, Optify, and Tune.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much for being here. And Heidi, what is your inspiration behind the Rogue Essentials?
Good question. So, I feel like growing up, my mom and I shopped a lot. So I was always into fashion from a young age. And here in Seattle, Nordstrom is such a big store, department, place of, work. And going there with my mom, it was just really fun. And so shopping always held a special place in my heart. And as I grew older and, my fashion started to become my own, a lot of my friends were like, oh my gosh, like, I love that top. I love that dress. I love your shoes. I love how you put that together. And then it really turned into them being like, hey, Heidi, do you want to go shopping? Like, sending me pictures. Like, what do you think of this? Like, how does this look on my body type? And then it really turned into like, hey, Heidi, what would you suggest I wear? And so I would just say that throughout time, it's been a very natural progression for me to start blogging. And really just the reaction from, friends and family and like the positivity that I get from them about how I put things together and what I wear really is the inspiration behind that. And then now moving towards sharing it with a larger audience.
I absolutely feel the same way. Growing up, some of my best memories would be, going on shopping trips with my mom. And, fashion is fun, but I think what's fulfilling is the curation, which is what I love about the focus on your blog. And we're going to delve right into that later on in this episode. Can you speak to some of the early success that you've seen about the blog that you can share in terms of metrics or performance, or maybe just overall the connections that you've been able to make with your readers?
Yeah. So, my career comes first. So really the way that I measure success for the Rogue Essentials right now is the connection that I'm able to make with my audience. And I think it's funny because people are like, oh, followers. I'm like, no, I want them to be my friends. I want them to be, an audience. Like, I want them to be active participants in what I'm doing and making sure that whatever I am presenting to them is of value, and that, I make sure that I'm just always bringing value to them as readers.
Yeah. And I think it's about curiosity and that human connection. I mean, Elizabeth Gilbert, I love her writing in Big Magic. And I think that that's great that you have that personal metric that you're measuring it against and not listening to what other people might expect of you, or not really focusing on that for now.
Yeah, well, and it's definitely, hard too, because I'm a competitive person. And so, I'm like, oh, there are all these bloggers that have 100,000 followers and things like that. But it's like, that is also their job. Like, that's their income. Like, that's their career at this point in time. And so I always have to keep in mind that, I have other goals in life other than just, blogging. And this really is like a hobby. It's a creative outlet. It's a way for me to connect with other creatives in the Seattle space.
Totally.
The other really amazing thing that's come out of this is that, and I know we're going to talk about the curation process a little bit later, but one of the things that I do often is just kind of browse around, and I really pay attention to up and coming women-owned businesses, whether it's a boutique, a brand, a fashion line. anything along those lines. And I always reach out if I feel like a connection with whoever is, building that brand, and just make sure that I'm there to help them grow. And so that's been another really exciting part of this whole journey, is just the whole community that's been created around the Rogue Essentials.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a work of art, or kind of like a final submission towards all of the experiences that you've accumulated over the years throughout your career. And, as mentioned, there are so many pieces in your career that work so well for the content for the Rogue Essentials. So, can we actually delve into each position and each place that you were at? What career decisions went into those, and what did they teach you?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. Well, I was an athlete back in the day, so I actually feel like that really, really laid a good foundation just for work ethic overall, and things of that nature. And when I played soccer.
Oh, I had to jump in and ask, because that gets me so excited. I actually didn't know that from you before the interview. Yeah. And there's a lot of, athletes that, I come across in meeting with salespeople, that competitive drive. Sally always says that sales is a high performance sport. So that's amazing.
Yep. I played soccer through college, and, I loved it. And it really did, like you mentioned, laid the foundation. And I always feel too, like when if I ever go into interviews or anything like that, it's something that the interviewer tends to call out. They're like, "Oh, you played a sport." I'm like, "Yes, and I won." So I like to win. But when I was going through college, that definitely, set the foundation for everything. And it actually was a really big part of me going into Nordstrom. So Nordstrom was my first job out of college. They were very impressed with the athletic background. I didn't have like a ton of experience overall, working in retail. I had worked in a boutique. And so I feel like that was the thing that was really able to convince them to bring me on board at Skilljar. Especially, I graduated in 2008, and that was a hard time for everybody. And but I really feel like at Nordstrom, once again, this was kind of the next layer of foundation there. It really taught me the importance of a relationship, during any type of sale, or really anything that I've taken on in my life. Relationships are really kind of the base of all of that. And so Nordstrom really also gave me the fashion background and the merchandising, and it created a structure around how to think about outfits that I wanted to put together. The importance of good denim, and how much difference a fit can make. And then also too, how much of a difference what you look like on the outside can make on the inside, if that makes sense. So women would come in and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I just have this interview. I need to look super stellar, but I don't want to be that person that just walks in with a black suit and a white shirt." And I'm like, "I've got you, girl." And so that was really, Nordstrom definitely, has played into everything moving forward, because there was leadership, there was fashion. They taught really good work ethic. They definitely work you to the bone there. It's retail. And so I still say to this day that was one of the hardest jobs that I've ever had, physically and mentally, just because of the whole retail aspect of it. But so that was Nordstrom. And then I worked at AWB for a little while. And so that gave me a lot of insight, I think, into how businesses run in general. So AWB is the Association of Washington Business, and they lobby for businesses in the state of Washington. And so that gave me a lot of insight into how businesses run, how regulation impacts business, particularly small business. And it really got me thinking, because you meet a lot of entrepreneurs in that world. And so that really got me thinking someday of doing something on my own. And it was a short stint there. It was very fun. But at that point, I made the jump into tech. So, and that really gave me all of the structure and the bones that I needed from a technical perspective in order to launch a blog. So when I worked at Optify, it was great, because I came in and had no idea about anything tech. And they were like, "You're going to be an account manager." And I was like, "Great. Sounds like fun." And it was just this like crash course in APIs and coding and HTML, and then all of the other just business stuff that you just don't realize, like the whole like marketing tool and the whole marketing engine and how that funnels into sales and all of that stuff. So Optify was really, you know, my first taste into very specifically seeing that world. Because I'm sure, as you know, when you're in larger businesses or larger organizations, you do your function, you know, and you live within your function, and you don't typically see everything else that funnels into that function beforehand as well as after. And so the other really fun thing about Optify is, so they were, they're not alive anymore, sadly. The company died. But that also taught me to ask about financials when I'm interviewing at startups. So
Yeah.
that was a really good thing. But they were similar to HubSpot at the time, and they were targeting small businesses to do marketing for them. And so one of my onboarding tasks was to actually create a blog for myself, and then build lead campaigns, marketing campaigns, and all of that through Optify. So I got real life experience, just got thrown into it. And it's funny, I actually don't even know if you could find it anywhere, but my very first blog was called Windswept Style.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it.
I did it through work, and they encouraged you to blog and continue to use, you know, the software in conjunction with your blog, just to make sure that, you know, you knew the ins and outs, and then that you could give, you know, your customers best practices.
You better get all the properties for Windswept Style. Like, that is a killer name right there. It makes me think of, I don't know, it makes me think of a really strong woman, like, you know, crushing it and just on her way to go do big things, but dressed in style.
And just effortless, right? Like, doesn't even
yeah,
hard to do all of this.
Right. Just rolled out of bed, kind of.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so then, then I went to a company called Tune. So, you know, there's still a prominent company here in Seattle. And that was really interesting for me, because it was definitely a few steps further into, you know, kind of the technical aspect of advertising and affiliate networking.
Right.
So, for those of you that may not be familiar with how bloggers make money, typically they'll work with brands, or they'll work with what's called a network. And they will take campaigns for brands. And if you guys, you know, click on an ad, or if you purchase something from like the blogger's page, or through something like reward style on Instagram, they'll actually get commission for that. And so Tune, the backbone product of that company is called Has Offers. And they tracked all of that back end activity, I guess you could say, on ads and through networks and things like that. And they were able to come up with a way to accurately attribute, you know, sales and things like that to the right people. And so that was just kind of this next step. And it's funny because obviously hindsight is 2020, but when I was going through all of this, I didn't realize that I was getting all of the, you know, things that I needed in order to understand and be able to launch a blog confidently. And so that was another big part of it. And then, you know, now I'm at Skilljar, and gosh, Skilljar is just my favorite. So I know we're talking about like women in sales, but I think women in tech in general is such an important topic. And we actually have about a 50-50 split at Skilljar. So women versus men, or not versus, but women and men. Mm-hmm. And my CEO is a woman. She's younger. She is a minority. And I just like find her incredibly fascinating, and working with her has been extremely empowering. Because I just have seen her tenacity and resilience in starting Skilljar. And it's like, I would say that that's really what I get from Skilljar for my blog, and kind of what prompted me to launch it when I was working there. Is I was like, oh my gosh, like Sandy can do anything. All the women that work here can do anything. So I can also do anything, you know? And I think that that's that was very motivating for me and was a big part in pushing me to launch my blog.
I love hearing, and thank you for, at my command, telling your entire life story. I really
I know. I was like, I guess I'll just keep going.
I love wielding so much power to know the intimate details of people's lives just by being the host of this show. That might be most of the reason that I do it, right? I mean, am I a bad person for saying that? But no, I think really the joy is hearing these stories, because we wouldn't really know otherwise. We really wouldn't be able to, at the beginning of your career, know that this is the direction that you were headed down. But, all of these things are woven together into just such a beautiful and coherent story where it's like, you went somewhere, it taught you something, and then you took that lesson, learned something else, and so on and so forth. And here you are, and life is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also say too that just throughout my experience with startups, because, I mentioned this before, like in a larger corporation, you do your function and you have certain insights into things like company meetings and, all hands and stuff like that. But when you're in a startup and it's just, you and a few other people that have to get the job done, you really can see the entire circle. And so when I felt like I was big enough with the Rogue Essentials to start reaching out to brands, in order to participate in partnerships and collaborations and things like that, I definitely used all of my knowledge of how to run a sales cycle and how to run marketing campaigns in order to do that. And then also too, just the ability to take no for an answer and be okay with it and not have your feelings hurt.
I was going to say, like, anytime you're creating something where you need to ask people for their response or their participation, it is exactly like skills. With the options that you have with any creative endeavor, I think it's really important for, women out there to just learn. It's a fundamental life skill of asking. And like you say, being able to take no for an answer and kind of run the entire sales cycle and see that course. I mean, seeing that happen in front of you and kind of being able to execute and, practice a skill that you have so diligently honed throughout the years into something that is creative. I mean, that in and of itself has got to be so fulfilling to you.
It absolutely is. And the other great part about that too, especially with when the answer is no, is following up with whoever that person is, brand or whatever, sales deal or whatever it is, but then finding out what the path is to yes, which I feel like is so important, because it's like, you're like, okay, that's great. Now is no, that's totally fine. But what will it take to get you to yes? It's, 10,000 followers, this much engagement, or it's 6 months down the line when you have budget and you can talk about this more. It just really, I think that really starts to open a lot of doors when you get no for an answer, but you're still, resilient enough and that this is going to be a good thing for whoever, you're talking to make sure that you get to a yes later on, whether that's 6 months, a year, 5 years down the line.
The sales game is a game of consistency and asking questions, right? Like, that's what we do all day, every day, is we execute on the strategy, be consistent at it, and, ask questions to get to the yes, or to maybe learn something for the next time. So that has got to be just such an emboldening experience for you to almost be able to teach yourself in every new experience what it takes. Now, what do you think it takes for you to be able to balance your career, which you say, is definitely, your career in tech is definitely your priority, and that comes first. But you also have this passion, and you're so well equipped to actually, not only just do it, but actually do it really well. How do you prioritize between the two? How do you spend your energy wisely?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's funny that you asked me that right now, because I'm feeling slightly burnt out.
Thank you for admitting that. I love,
yeah.
I mean, it's not, I guess, easy in any case for anyone, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it is hard to admit that, because you're like, oh, I should always be on the go. I should always be doing the next thing. But what I realized over time is I tend to, I still haven't evened out my editorial calendar with the Rogue Essentials, because things definitely come up with work a lot. Things need to get pushed to the wayside. The only time that doesn't happen is when I have like a brand partnership and I, have a deadline that I have to meet. But yeah, so I think it's really just listening to, it's just listening to yourself and being like, okay, so this is something that I do on the side. Like, it's like my side hustle. I'm passionate about it, but like, what's the point of having like a side hustle that like really doesn't make you that much money if while you're doing it, you're not having fun? And so that's a little bit of like my, barometer on when I should take a break from things and when I should keep going.
Right.
And so I just feel like right now, things with Skilljar, we just went through our Series A funding round a couple months ago. We are just like on this like upward path right now, and our customers are so excited, and there's so much to be done that I'm feeling a little bit more like my cup is filled by doing that and, addressing that. And then when I have time or I feel inspiration, I'm like, oh, I'm going to write this down. And this is a good suggestion. And I actually forget the name of the guy that wrote a blog post about it, but I can find it. But it's the concept of a yet to do list. So it's not a to-do list.
Interesting. No, I haven't. Interesting.
Yeah, so it's not a to-do list, because a to-do list is like, okay, I'm going to write this down and then I'm going to do it within like a certain period of time. But a yet to-do list is a little bit more like a strategic outlook on things.
Right.
Where you're like, okay, so I'm one person or I'm a company, but I only have a finite amount of resources. And I know I need to do all of these things eventually, and I don't want to forget about them, but they're not prioritized right now. And so typically when I'm not really super focused on the Rogue Essentials and writing content and creating content and things like that, I jot things down on a yet to do list. And that can be ideas or, just anything as simple as like, oh, I need to start building a marketing list and stuff like that. And then I'll revisit that every once in a while and reprioritize based on the ideas that I've had and the things that I know that I need to do. And so I would say that even though it's on the back burner, you still can attribute to your overall goals for your side hustle or whatever that may be.
So a yet to do list is like it's like things that are going to happen, but just putting them on deck so that you don't forget about them, but you also don't need to feel overwhelmed by them.
Exactly. It's a way to keep track of the bigger picture without actually having to necessarily execute on it until you're ready.
Yeah. What would you say your creative process looks like in terms of getting inspiration? And then also, how does that play and mesh into just your own personal sense of curation? I'm sure there's like a blend of suggestions that you want to give out to your readers, but that's heavily, put together with, essentials that you're choosing to feature that you just love.
Yeah. So I think recently I've taken a little bit of a turn with what I've been producing. And I had mentioned this a little bit before, but it's definitely more focused on shopping local, shopping small, shopping women-owned businesses. I just have had the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of those women recently. And I find that, very empowering, very motivating and inspiring. And so I would just say that in respect to your original question, which is like, what's your curation process? It's just what's inspiring me in the moment. And another thing that I've realized blogging, and I think that this is something really, really good for everyone who, or it will be impactful. Like if you start a blog or if any of you guys out there want to start a blog, just remember that, there are a lot of bloggers talking about the exact same thing that you're talking about. So the thing that's unique about your blog is you. And so I remember that, and it's your viewpoint. It's what you see, how you see the world and where you want your life to be. And that can be very inspiring to other people. And so that's kind of my curation process, I guess. So if I run across something that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, or wow, that story is so impactful to me. That inspires me to, you know, create something for my blog around that.
And I think that's what curation is all about, right? Like in your life, in, you know, maybe physical items, but I think living life with essentials at hand and consciously curating is so important, and such a beautiful sentiment and takeaway from this episode. But really, it takes a lot of just maybe connecting with your inner instincts and your gut, like, you know, how you get to decide if you know, something is too much for you or something is out of balance. It's just asking yourself, like, you know, am I still having fun? Am I still enjoying this? And, you know, with the content that you're creating, it's like, you know, that's a good point. Like if everybody's, or if most people are going to be talking about similar things, and there are a lot of people talking about the exact same thing, then you might as well just talk about what you really want to talk about. Because in any case, you know, that's the only unique part of it. And you have value in that part of that curation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's where the whole like trending thing about like who's your squad or who's your tribe or things like that. But, you know, that just really goes back to like, who is your community? And I think that, you know, blogging is such a good way to, or social media in general is such a good way to get out there and find your community. And not meaning that people are like-minded, but meaning that people are inspired by you and you're inspired by them.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be like everyone's the same type of thing. It's more, it's more of just like really opening your eyes to like what's out there in the world. Yeah, if that makes sense.
I think I want to, you know, start putting out more just stuff on my Instagram page, or maybe starting a blog, because I actually did, it did occur to me that like this would be a great way just to connect with people that aren't physically like in proximity to me, but to find my tribe, to find my community, and to have that gravitational, you know, pull between us, you know, wherever people are and wherever we are in our lives and our careers, and but we can, you know, connect on something that we love and enjoy. My previous guest, Emily Gruninger at Zapier, who's one of your great friends, from Tune. Yeah. And she is, you know, in her, the parting words from our last episode were about minimalism, and her sharing with us about, you know, just being really conscious in the choices you make about consumption. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. And just, you know, her digitally nomadic life, you know, also goes along with those values as well.
Yeah, absolutely. She's really living the life. She's doing her thing. I was like, you go.
But so are you. I mean, so are all of the women. But, you know, if it weren't for us, you know, hearing our stories, we wouldn't know. And I think that's been the value of sharing. And in a way, like we're also creating our community here, because, you know, our lives are all so different, but we're all doing our own thing. And we have this common theme of being women in sales. Speaking of which, you know, who is a modern woman that inspires you? Or what are some words or phrases that you think of that really embody, you know, the modern woman who understands her essentials?
Yeah. So, I mean, once again, going back to the CEO of Skilljar, Sandy Lynn, not just saying this to suck up.
Although we will tag her in the show notes.
No, I mean, I just think that as a modern woman, you know, she's really paved a very successful path for herself. And she's also created a lot of opportunity for others to do the same. And I think that's really what being a modern woman is. You know, it's inspiring others, it's empowering other women. And I know that there's, you know, the tech community takes a lot of slack a lot of the times, in sales too, for being like a boys club. And, you know, I've experienced that. I'm sure you've experienced that. You know, everybody kind of has their own story. But since I've gone to Skilljar, and just being privy to seeing a woman be very, very successful, and then also pulling in a lot of other successful women around her, and then, you know, being able to give back to the community as a whole. by going to different events and speaking at events and, connecting people together. Like that's what I think is being a modern woman, because a lot of the time too, when we're like, oh, like they're or people are like, oh, they're catty or competitive or she's prettier than her, or, things like that. And it's just like, I just feel like all of that has been taken out of the equation since I've been at Skilljar, and it's been very, very refreshing. And Sandy has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, definitely living intently and with conviction and leading and empowering others to do the same. I 100% agree with that. Is there anything that we haven't discussed or that I haven't asked you that you'd like to leave our audience with?
I mean, I don't want to say something like follow your dreams,
No.
But like seriously do.
But seriously, yeah.
Seriously do. Like it's really fun, and I think that you would be surprised, or you'll be surprised if you embark on whatever you want to embark on the side or in your career, whatever. If you start to talk about it and what it means to you, people are going to be there to support you. You are going to grow your community, and you're going to be better for it. Whether that's something that's going to be you're an entrepreneur and that's going to be your business overall, or you're just doing a side hustle like me with the blog, it's just going to open up your world to new things. And that's the really exciting part.
And essentials can also mean more than just necessities like, a thriving career or physical possessions. It can also mean fulfillment and creativity and connection and community. I mean, absolutely. Even without the Rogue Essentials, you have everything still going for you, but I bet you can't, imagine your life without that creative outlet and, now the bonds and that you form through that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I will not step away from for a while. And once I, have a little bit more time and a little bit more organized, hopefully it'll start to grow more and more, and I'll be able to reach more people and meet more people.
Amazing. So where can people find you? We're going to link to the Rogue Essentials in the show notes. Is there anywhere else that you'd like people to find and connect with you on?
Absolutely. So I am at The Rogue Essentials on Instagram as well.
Beautiful feed. I'm already followed.
Oh, great. Perfect. And honestly, like that's where I share the majority of my content. I do write on my blog often as well, but Instagram is definitely like where I go. And then if anybody, wants to talk about work or technology or, anything like that, or of my journey through startups, like I love talking to people that are looking to get into tech and things like that. So they can always reach out to me at Heidi@skilljar.com.
Amazing. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, did you enjoy this episode? I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. If you have questions that you'd like our guests to answer, or if you know of a woman in sales that we should feature, email me, Rebecca@close.io. That's with 1 B and 2 C's. And if you enjoyed this episode, got value out of it, got inspired, share it with a friend. There's a link in the description where you can also find show notes, and you can follow this series by subscribing to Close.io's YouTube channel, iTunes, SoundCloud, and various other podcast apps that you might already use. See you guys on the next one.